Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. I wear this button proudly. I am the son of immigrants, and I think we should never forget that all of us have come from someplace else to be Americans, and we can never, ever lose sight of that fact. Thank you very much, Mr. Sugarman, for your kind words and for your outstanding leadership. Your commitment to the Anti-Defamation League, a commitment which has spanned 4 decades, inspires all of us. I also want to thank Abe for your extraordinary contributions to this organization and also to our country. You lived through World War II in Poland and endured forced migration into a ghetto. And when you came to the United States, you transcended, though you never forgot, the hate that you witnessed as a child. From this experience, you've worked to make our country a better place, and you have succeeded. All of us are deeply grateful for your decades of service. It's good to be among so many friends. That's especially true in Washington, D.C. I have known and I've had the privilege of working with many of you for years, and some of you for decades. In the early 90s, when I served as D.C.'s United States Attorney, I first began convening meetings with your members like Jess Hordes. And I continued to work with many of you during my tenure as Deputy Attorney General in the Clinton administration. I was struck then, and am impressed now, by your determination to steer our nation toward fair treatment for all, despite unprecedented challenges and stubborn resistance. I am now, and always have been, proud to count you as allies in our shared work to achieve and to ensure justice for all Americans, regardless of religion, race, sexual orientation, background, gender, or creed. So, you started nearly a century ago with just $200, two desks in a cramped Chicago office, and one idealistic charter that promised to, quote, stop defamation and secure justice and fair treatment to all citizens, unquote. But look at you now. Just look around. You began by calling out bigots and by calling for the elimination of religious stereotypes in mainstream newspapers. But before long, you were infiltrating and weakening the Ku Klux Klan, cracking the quotas at our premier colleges, helping to pass the seminal civil rights legislation of the 1960s, and quite literally making a world of difference, as the program is still called, in classrooms across America by teaching our children the value of tolerance and the danger of bias. All of this, of course, is only a snapshot of your many achievements. Today, I want to applaud you for the most recent example of your work and our partnership at its best. And I'd like to update you on where this administration stands on questions of law and policy that I know are among your top concerns. Now, you all deserve credit, and you should take pride in the fact that last fall, Congress passed the most significant civil rights legislation to be enacted in decades. Now, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crimes Prevention Act may seem like common sense, but it's easy to forget that it was more than a decade ago, 10 years, that I testified in the Senate in support of new hate crimes legislation that many of you were working tirelessly to move forward. Well, of course, we did make some progress, and I'm especially grateful to David Friedman, who is here today, for collaborating with me in the late 90s to set up the first hate crime working group, which became a model across our country. This was an important and a much-needed start, and it provided a foundation for the progress that we celebrate today. Finally, we have reached a moment in history where the words lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender appear in the United States Code, where gender and disability-motivated crimes can be investigated with the full resources of the federal government, and where we can now finally prosecute hateful acts of violence wherever and however they occur. It wasn't easy to get there, but your hard work and persistence helped to ensure that we finally did. And while we have good cause for celebration, this is no time to become complacent. No time. Yes, it may be tempting when you look at the diversity of the people walking the halls of Congress, or the men sitting in the Oval Office, and the Chief of Staff's office next door. to think that equal justice has been achieved for all Americans, or that equal opportunity is inherent, or that we've moved beyond our history of prejudice. It will take more, my friends, much more than the election of the first African-American president, much more than the selection of a Jewish White House chief of staff, and certainly more than the appointment of the first African-American attorney general, to fully secure the promises of equality and justice, and to finally conform our present reality to our founding principles. This is especially true and clear when it comes to hate crimes. Today, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center's latest count, there are 932 known hate groups operating across our country. In the last decade, the number of hate groups has increased by more than 50%. Each year, approximately 7,500 hate crimes are committed across our country. That's nearly one hate crime every hour of every day. And that is simply unacceptable. Now, all of you have seen these numbers manifested in the most horrific ways. Last year's shooting at our nation's Holocaust Museum, the attempted bombing of synagogues in the Bronx, and a year ago this week, the murder of a Wesleyan University student who may have been targeted and killed because of her Jewish faith. Now, these examples, like far too many others, serve as most tragic reminders that the world has yet to run its course of bigotry and cruelty.